Chapter 17. Penance. I didn't believe Samuel was capable of rage he demonstrated in front of me the following afternoon. His eyes were so filled with it that they looked bloodshot. His normally tan cheek had eggshell white spots on the skin, and his temple was so taut. He could have been used over a drum. He nearly took my office door off its hinges when he entered and slammed it so hard the walls shook. I was about to protest when he extended his arm, his long right forefinger, and jabbed it at my surprised face. "Don't," he commanded. "Don't say a word until I'm finished speaking." After saying that, he fumed for a few more moments, pacing in front of me. Then he paused, took a deep breath, and put his hands palms down on my desk as he leaned toward me. I could feel the heat radiating from his eyes of fire. I half expected he would burn his palm prints on my wood. "Your sister came to tell you and told you that she was pregnant with Nelson child's baby, and you met with Nelson and told him you and I are going to keep the child as our own? Does that sum it all up in a nutshell?" "Hardly," I said. But for now, yes. When exactly were you going to tell me any of this? When exactly was I going to learn what happens in my own home? When... "Please, Samuel, stop it," I cried. He glared, his lips firm. He was shooting so many daggers across the desk at me, I had trouble looking at him. "Stop it." "Stop it, you say? I know I'm not in the businessman your father was. I know you do a great many things better than I do here, but I know I'm still your husband, the father of your children. All I ask, Olivia, is that you treat me with this much respect," he said, holding up his forefinger and thumb as if it was showing a pinch of salt. He paused, waiting for my response. "You're right," I said after a moment. "You're absolutely right." His eyes widened with surprise. He had been expecting my characteristic fortitude. "I should have involved you sooner in all this. I was wrong, but I was just so upset over Belinda and what happened. I saw red and took matters into my own hands." "Which is what you always do," he said, nodding. "I am who I am. I'm not perfect, Samuel." "Well," he stepped back, "I must say it's a novelty to hear you say that, Olivia." He gazed at me a moment, then sat in front of the desk, sinking into the seat. "What do you expect to accomplish here? Why are you permitting Belinda to have the baby and keep the baby in our home? It's her child, our niece or nephew, isn't it? We don't give away children like we do extra fish," I said. "But for an unmarried woman to have a child fathered by a married man, and for us to keep the child and bring him up alongside Jacob and Chester, it will simply complicate matters so much more, Olivia. You haven't thought this through and considered all the aspects," he concluded, shaking his head. "Did he send you here to tell me this, to plead with me, to give this child to some agency, so that his conscience is clear, so he has no worries? Well, did he?" "He asked me to reason with you, yes," Samuel admitted. "I thought so. He's quite distraught about it." "Oh, please," I said, turning my chair. "He's quite distraught? Why is it that men can only see the suffering they endure?" I thought a moment and then looked at Samuel again. "Is this what you would do, Samuel, if it were all reversed? Would you have gone to him and asked him to go to his wife and plead your case, asking for the same things?" "That's a ridiculous question. I don't have affairs." "Of course you don't. You're better than that, Samuel. I realize that. Haven't you told me time after time that you believe in family as I do? Didn't you tell me that my father was right in building that belief in us all?" "Yes, but..." "Well, what does Belinda want?" "Belinda?" I laughed. "She wants everything unpleasant to disappear. She always has. She's a lot like my mother in that way, but this time it won't work." "You mean you won't let it?" "I mean we'll bear the burden of our responsibilities. What she's done affects us. Surely you won't want me to turn that child out of our home, Samuel. You're just not that sort of man, and that's why I wanted to marry you in the first place, I said. You credit me with intelligence. Credit me with perception to see good qualities too, Samuel. He gazed at me, and I kept my eyes so fixed on him and so full of sincerity, he swallowed down my words and felt good about it. I could see his ego inflate like a little raft. Well, if you put it that way, I suppose we could manage it fine. It's not a question of money or anything, and as you say, the child carries your family blood. If it's what you think we should do, Olivia, I wouldn't do it otherwise, Samuel. I'm sorry I didn't come right to you with the problem, but I was sorting out my own mind first. I was going to tell you everything today. He nodded. All right then, he said. I do feel sorry for Belinda, though, he said in a wistful tone. She's made a mess of herself. With someone else's help, I reminded him. He raised his eyebrows. Yes, well, he said, slapping his arms on the chair as he stood. Every family has skeletons in his closet. Ours won't be the first, huh? Hardly, I said. Is there anything I should do, he asked. Tell Nelson Childs to stop sending emissaries to accept his responsibility. Tell him to be half of the man you are, Samuel, I said. He smiled. I don't think he'd like to hear that, Olivia. He started for the door and stopped. How are you going to handle Belinda? I mean, leave it to me, Samuel. It's mostly all female problems anyway from here, until she gives birth, I said. Yes, I suppose you're right, he thought for a moment. Sorry I came bursting in on you like that. It's all right, Samuel, I understand, and once again, I'm sorry I didn't speak to you sooner. He smiled. Would you like me to take you to lunch today, Olivia? We haven't done that for a while. I thought for a moment. Yes, Samuel, I said. Yes, I would. His smile broadened, and then he left. I sat there quietly in my office, listening to the tick-tock of the miniature grandfather clock on the shelf. Was I a monster for handling Samuel that way? The only one left for Nelson to petition was Belinda, and that would be the most futile effort of all. She would do exactly as I told her to do, and he wouldn't understand why. He wouldn't understand that I had really been more of a mother to her than her own mother. The next evening, that was exactly what he tried. He pleaded with her on the phone and offered to take care of everything if she would just do what he wanted. She came down to the living room where I was reading, listening to music to tell me. She was very excited. In her mind, it solved the problem. He knows a place where I can go to have the baby, and he'll make sure the baby has a really good family. He's right, isn't he, Olivia? I can raise the baby. I can't raise a baby, and I can't put it on you and Samuel. You have your own children to raise. He's not right. We've had this conversation, and I don't want to hear another word on it. But I don't want to have a baby, Olivia. I don't want to. I rose from my seat with such fury. She covered before me. You don't want to have a baby? You don't want? Olivia, please. Shall I remind you of the night not so long ago, a night filled with screams and a night that aged your father in years and seconds? Shall I take you for a ride tomorrow and march you out to the back of our old house? Shall I show you where he's buried? Stop it, she said, putting her hands over her ears. I drew closer, relentless. Did I ever tell you how it drove Daddy mad? How he heard the baby crying in the night? Did I ever tell you how he cried like a baby? Stop it, please, she begged. You will have this baby, Olivia, and it will be brought up in this home. We'll bury no more children, not in the ground and not in someone else's family, I said through clenched teeth. Don't you ever speak to him again. Do you understand? If he calls you, hang up the phone and tell him to talk to me. Are you listening? Yes, Olivia, yes. Go upstairs. You need your rest. I'm starting to show, Olivia. I have to wear something to hide it. I can't go out and meet people without their knowing eventually, she moaned. Don't worry about it. Soon you'll stop going out and meeting people anyway, I said. What? We're going to tell people that you're away and you're going to stay confined in the house and the grounds until you give birth, Belinda. Don't worry about it. Confined? She looked about, dazed. Just go upstairs. Do as I say, I told her firmly. But how many women would be willing to take on the burden of their sister's illegitimate child, Belinda? How many? He or she will grow up with my boys and have the benefits they enjoy. When are you going to show me some gratitude, or at least be cooperative enough to help me help you? When? I screamed. Okay, Olivia, okay, she said in a small voice. What should I do? Just go upstairs, I said. She nodded and lowered her head and left the room. The days turned into weeks, and the arrangements I had described for Belinda came to pass. To ensure she didn't disobey, I had her phone disconnected. When her bubblegum friends called after that, I told them that she was visiting relatives for a few months. In time, their calls stopped, and all our lives settled down for a while. Samuel did his best to amuse her during this period. He brought her presents, newspapers and magazines, records, tapes to occupy her time. By the middle of the 9th month, Belinda took to remaining in the bed most of the day, never getting dressed. She let her hair go and she ate constantly, satisfying every craving, driving Effie mad with requests for this and that. It's not good for her, Mrs. Logan, Effie complained to me. She's getting too fat. Thelma agrees. When I want opinions on diet, I'll ask. For now, just give her anything she wants, I ordered. However, I had to admit that when I did look at her now, she reminded me of one of her stuffed animals. Her face bloated, her stomach lifting the blanket into a small hill. Her arms resembled balloons. This pregnancy was a tumor eating away at her beauty and good looks. She seemed to have lost all concern about herself anyway. Without her doting friends and her streams of boyfriends, she stopped using makeup. Even her hygiene began to suffer. If I didn't insist that she take a bath, she wouldn't wash her face and hands for days. She got so she didn't get off the bed to urinate, but used the bedpan and left it for hours until either I or Effie came by to empty it. Eventually, I instructed Thelma to keep the children away from Belinda's room. She'll give them nightmares, I said. Thelma was worried about Belinda and how we were handling the pregnancy. She wasn't the type to interfere, but she did stop by my den office one night to express her concern. I appreciate that, Thelma, I told her, but for now it has to be this way. Why, Mrs. Logan? She pursued. I put aside what I was doing and sat back. It's really none of your business, but you've become a part of the family, so I'll tell you, I said, and went on to describe the disgrace. Without mentioning a name, I explained that Belinda was carrying an influential person's baby, and we are trying to protect the child as well as Belinda. I asked her just to cooperate and understand, and it satisfied her. I'll need you to spend a little bit more time with the children. I have to give more to Belinda now, I said. Oh, of course, Mrs. Logan. Please call me for anything, she said, and I thanked her. For Belinda, every day seemed harder and harder than the one from before. She knew she was drawing closer and closer. When's the doctor coming, Olivia? She asked me one evening. He's never been to see me. We're not having a doctor, Belinda, I told you. I've made the arrangements with the midwife. It's more discreet. Why does it have to be discreet? People don't know about the pregnancy. Let's try to keep it that way, as long as we can. I'm only trying to protect your reputation, I said. My reputation? My reputation, she laughed, and looked at the wall as if someone was standing there, as if the room were crowded with male admirers the way it once was. Did you hear that? She's worried about my reputation. She laughed again, each roll of laughter coming like a cough and then continuing like an uncontrollable hiccup. Stop it, Belinda. My reputation, she shrieked and laughed madly. I stepped up beside the bed and hovered over her, my hands in fists. Stop this nonsense this instant, I commanded. Her laughter wound down until it became subdued as a sob, and then she closed her eyes and sighed as if she had passed away. I stood there waiting. Her eyes opened and she smiled up at me as if nothing in the world was wrong. Please tell Elfie I'd like some ice cream. Strawberry. No. Butternut crunch with chocolate syrup and some marshmallow sauce. Fine, I said. I had a pain today, Olivia. It hurt a lot, she said. It's no wonder you have pains lying there like some pig in the mud. But you know what labor pains are. That's when you've got to become concerned. It was a labor pain. It's starting, she said with a nod. I should see a doctor. I don't care about my reputation. I'll call the midwife and she'll examine you tomorrow, I told her, and gave Effie the request for the ice cream. The midwife was a brava who ministered mainly to poor people, but had on occasion handled situations for the well-to-do and had to be kept as secret as possible. Her name was Isabella, and she looked like she was nearly 70, although I knew she wasn't much more than 50. She wore her smoky gray hair long and stringy to her shoulders. Her face was leathery, with wrinkles even in her chin. Belinda gasped the first time she set eyes on her. Later she told me she thought she was a witch. She put a curse on me, she said. Don't be ridiculous, I told her. But she looked even more maddened after the examination. Isabella predicted it wouldn't be much longer before Belinda delivered, maybe a week. As it turned out, she had underestimated. For the very next day, Belinda went into such terrific labor. Elfie had to call me home from work. I sent for Isabella immediately, but she was delivering another woman's baby just north of Hinias. All afternoon, Belinda shrieked and squirmed in her bed. Effie and I did all we could to make her comfortable, but nothing seemed to help. She ought to go to the hospital, Mrs. Logan, Effie finally said. The midwife will be here soon, I told her. Samuel, who had come home too, stood outside the door looking very somber. We're making a mistake trying to do it this way, Olivia. Let's just bring her to the hospital. She'll be all right, Samuel. Many women have had their children at home. In fact, most have. Not these days, Olivia. Just go see what we can find about the midwife. Maybe she'll be back from Hyenas, Samuel. He lingered as Belinda screamed again and again, squeezing my hand, pleading with me to do something. There's nothing to do, Belinda. The baby's getting ready to be born. It wasn't like this before. She grabbed my wrist and pulled me down with such strength I was admonished. She whispered, I'm being punished for what I've done. The witch cursed me. Help me. Stop it, I told her. Be a grown-up for a change. I tore her grip from my wrist, but she clung to my dress, and I had to pry her fingers away. Stop acting like an idiot. I'll get you some water and some cold towels for your face. Don't leave me. I don't want to be alone like this. I was the last time. I'm afraid. You're being absolutely ridiculous, I said, and left the room, closing the door shut to shut off her cries of agony. For a moment I stood there in the hallway trying to decide what I wanted more. Nelson's baby to be born healthy and well, or Nelson's baby to die, just like Belinda's first child had. I covered my face in my hands and shook my head. Daddy's dying words echoed. Look after Belinda. Take care of Belinda. Belinda, 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 I screamed in the dark confines of my own mind. What about me, Daddy? What about what I feel and what I suffer? I took a deep breath, gathered my wits, and went downstairs to find Samuel rushing out of the house. Isabel's back. I'm going to go get her, he said. Good. I took my time returning to Belinda's room. The fact is, I left her screaming and squirming in agony by herself for nearly a half hour. I heard her throw something against the wall. I heard it thump, and then I returned to her room. When I opened the door, she was giving birth. Her eyes so wide, I thought her head would tear apart. Why did you leave me? Help me. For the first time in my life, I felt nailed to the floor, unable to do anything, mesmerized, rendered, paralyzed by the sight before me. I could see the child's head. Belinda screamed and reached down like some wild animal, trying to ease the fetus from its womb. I heard the sound of footsteps on the stairway and turned to see Thelma hurrying up, Effie right behind her. What's happening, Mrs. Logan? I just nodded at Belinda. Oh dear, she's having it, Thelma cried and rushed to the bed. In the end, it was Thelma and not the midwife who delivered Belinda's child, a girl. Ironically, although she wasn't mine, she was the daughter Samuel had wanted. Belinda had no interest in her own baby after the birth. She didn't offer a single suggestion for a name. In the end, it was Samuel who had always wanted a girl and to name her after his mother, Haley, who named Belinda's child. The night Haley was born, I sat in my den and called Nelson at home. His maid answered the phone, and then he came on, his voice subdued. She had a girl, I said. We're calling her Haley after Samuel's mother. The baby's all right? As far as we can see, yes, I said. And Belinda? She's not all right. She'll never be all right, I reminded him. Do you need anything, he asked, his voice testy and reluctant. Not at the moment. If you want to see the child, come by tomorrow night after 10, I said. You're making a mistake, Olivia, he said in a tired, defeated voice. I don't think you have the moral right, nor the insight to make that conclusion, Nelson. Okay, he said, I'll be there after 10. He was. He would do whatever I asked him to do from now on, I thought. Haley was like a whip in my hand. As long as she was in my home, Nelson would be at my beck and call. It gave me some sense of power. It wasn't love, but for the moment it seemed to satisfy me. I quickly realized that something dreadful had happened in the dark corridors of Belinda's mind after she gave birth. She became very withdrawn, almost catatonic. Whenever she saw the baby that night, she looked at it as if she were surprised to see it. It was as if she lost her memory of her pregnancy, and especially the delivery. Even the days later, she rose from her bed and moved about the room. She was like someone who emerged from a coma. She wore a strange blank look on her face, smiled and laughed at the silliest things, behaving as if she weren't much older than Jacob. In fact, she wandered into his playroom often and sat amusing herself with his toys until I would come home and demanded that she shower and dress. I had Effie put her on somewhat of a diet, but she cheated, sneaking around the house, nibbling on crackers and cookies, even stealing the children's desserts. She avoided Haley, sometimes acting so terrified of her own child that she would tremble and cry. It was as if she thought the baby might return to her womb and she would have to give birth again. Sometimes, right in the middle of my talking to her, Belinda would burst into tears. When I would ask her why she was crying, she would just shake her head and moan, I don't know, I can't help it. Frustrated, I would leave the room. The truth was, I was frightened by her behavior, frightened by my inability to change it or stop it. Nelson didn't see her the first time he came to see Haley. Belinda's door was shut and she was asleep. I greeted him at the front door myself and led him to the stairs to the nursery. Samuel, who was reading in our bedroom, came out to see Nelson. They shook hands but said little to each other. I brought him to the nursery, and he entered slowly. Thelma wasn't there, so it was just Nelson, myself, and Samuel. "Pretty, isn't she?" Samuel said when Nelson peered into the bassinet. "Yes. I bet she's going to be a beauty, huh, Olivia?" Samuel said. "We'll see," I said. "She does look healthy," Nelson said, his voice thick with surprise. "Babies born out of wedlock can be healthy too," I remarked. He grimaced. Then he straightened up and looked at both Samuel and me. "Can I talk you people out of this? Can I offer to have her placed in a good home?" "No," I said sharply. I looked at Haley. "She's a Gordon now. Maybe she'll never know who her father really is, but she'll always know this part of her heritage," I said. "When Olivia's determined about something, Nelson, she's unmovable," Samuel said, smiling. Nelson glanced at me. "I know," he said. He looked at the baby again. "Do you want any money now?" "When I need something from you," I said, "you'll be told." He turned away from me quickly. "How about a drink, Nelson?" Samuel offered him. He put his arm around Nelson's shoulder. "Sure," Nelson said. He glanced at me fugitively once more before leaving with Samuel. I gazed down at the sleeping infant. She was pretty. I didn't want to admit it to Nelson, but I had expected her to be uglier, even possibly deformed because she was Belinda's child. My emotions were frazzled. Part of me had hoped she was going to be that way, and yet another part of me was happy she was a perfect little girl. She would dazzle people right before Nelson's eyes, and he would look at me with an aching heart. It still seemed like a delicious revenge. In the months that followed, Belinda finally got so she took some interest in herself again and did her hair and her makeup, but now she overdid her makeup, and she looked foolish, even clownish. It didn't matter what I told her. She would look at me. She would She would look at me and smile, agree, and then keep doing what she was doing. I grew disgusted and talked to Samuel about sending her away for a while. Perhaps a holiday would get her back to normal. Not that I ever approved of what she called being normal, I said. Samuel agreed, and we looked into a trip for her, perhaps visiting some of relatives in Charlestown. She had been there 3 years ago. Work had become demanding again. Our business went into a dramatic upswing, and we had less and less time to spend at home and worrying about Belinda anyway. Then one afternoon, Effie called me to tell me Belinda had left the house. "Did someone come get her?" "No, Mrs. Logan." "Well, did she say where she was going?" I chastised myself for not hiding the car keys. "Yes," she replied with hesitation. "Well, she said she was going home, Mrs. Logan." "Home? Did you see her drive away?" I asked quickly. "She didn't take the car. She just started walking." "Walking? All right, thank you, Effie," I said and went to tell Samuel. When we found her less than an hour later, she was strolling on the main highway. Cars were whizzing by, sometimes dangerously close, but she didn't seem to notice or care. Samuel pulled up in front of her, and I got out quickly. "Belinda, what are you doing? What are you doing?" "Oh, hi, Olivia. I was just..." She looked about as if first realizing where she was. "I was just going somewhere," she laughed. "I forgot exactly where," she said. "Silly, I know, but it's such a beautiful day. It seemed a crime to stay inside." "Get in the car, Belinda," I ordered and opened the door. "Come on, get in," I said. "Are we going somewhere?" she asked and got in the car. "Yes," I said. "We're all going crazy." She thought that was funny. We brought her home, and I saw that she went to her room. "She was in no condition to go on holiday yet, Olivia," Samuel said. "Let's just do what we can to get her healthy." "I just don't have the time for this now, Samuel," I told him. "She's got to snap out of it herself, and she's got to do it immediately." He shook his head as if I were talking gibberish. After dinner that night, however, I went up to Belinda's room. She was sitting at her vanity table, mindlessly running a brush through her hair and smiling dreamily at her image in the mirror, as if she saw a much younger, thinner face again. "Belinda, I want to talk to you, and I want you to look at me and listen," I told her. She turned slowly. "I always listen to you, Olivia," she said. "Yes, but do you hear me?" She giggled. If I listen, I have to hear you, don't I? You've got to get a hold of yourself now. I want you to stop behaving like a crazy woman. I want you to eat right, dress right, be judicious about your makeup, and start thinking about what you want to do with the rest of your life. We can't have you continue to be a burden on everyone. Do you understand?" "Yes," she said. "Good." She turned back to the mirror and continued to brush her hair. "Actually, I'm very upset. No one's called me today, Olivia." "Your phone's been disconnected, Belinda, remember?" "Oh, was it? Can you connect it again? I'm expecting calls." I stared at her and she brushed her hair, then started to put on her lipstick far too thickly. "This is ridiculous," I said. "It's coming to an end right now." I marched out of her room and went to my bedroom and called Nelson. "I have something I want you to do," I said when he answered the phone. "What?" "Come to my office tomorrow at 11. "I have appointments too, Olivia. I can't just drop clients like that," he pleaded. "All right," I said, softening. "When can you come?" "I'm free between 2 and 3. "Good," I said. I hung up and thought for a moment. I wasn't breaking any promise to Daddy, I concluded. I was keeping it. My conscience was clear. As I left the room, I paused in the nursery. Thelma had Haley in her arms and was rocking her to sleep. "She's a beautiful child, Mrs. Logan," she said. "I know." "Belinda will be all right," she added, "I'm sure. Once she realizes what a wonderful little girl she has, she'll be fine." "We'll see," I said, and went downstairs to tell Samuel what I thought had to be done. He was upset and tried to talk me out of it, but I was confident. The next day, Nelson arrived at my office at 2:30. Samuel wasn't back from a lunch meeting, so Nelson and I were alone. He came in, closed the door, and sat on the sofa across from my desk. "Is this the way it'll be forever now, Olivia? You summon me and I come?" he asked, his eyes glaring at like orbs of glass with candles lit behind them. "I called you to meet with me because I need your help. Now, Nelson," I said, with a disgusting smirk left on his face to replace with an expression of deep concern. "I see. What is it?" "It's Belinda," I said. "She's not getting much better. We both underestimated the traumatic experience she's undergone," I continued, rising from my chair to come around the desk and lean against it. He followed me with his eyes. "I don't understand," he said. "You remember I told you she was having emotional problems after giving birth?" "Yes, but I know that not to be uncommon. I don't need a lecture about maternal problems. This is more serious of a mental illness, Nelson. She's become a burden on top of everything else. I warned you, Olivia. I told you keeping the baby was... I'm not talking about the baby, Nelson. I'm talking about my work, my business, my social obligations. The baby's not the problem. Belinda's the problem." "Do you want me to recommend a good doctor?" "I want you to do more," I said. "You're the judge now? I want you to sign a commitment order. She needs to be institutionalized." "What? You're joking. Institutionalized?" She needs serious mental treatment. She always has. This is just the last straw. My parents never wanted to admit it themselves, but Belinda has always been unstable. She's now practically a lunatic." "But you haven't even had her properly diagnosed, Olivia," he protested. "I don't expect any other conclusion anyway, Nelson. I want you to help me with this. Make it smooth. There's a clinic nearby. She'll be comfortable there, only there's a waiting list a mile long. I need you to use your political influence and get her in next week. Next week? Do what has to be done and call me with the results, I said. I won't do it, he said defiantly. I smiled at him. Won't you? You're going to shirk with your responsibility? I'm not shirking anything, but you know why she's this way. Who did it to her? You didn't just impregnate my sister and produce an illegitimate child. You've caused a terrible mental problem. I should just give up and let everyone know everything, I declared. I'm sick of covering up everyone's weaknesses. I turned my desk chair and stared down at the desk. Olivia, are you sure about this? He asked softly. It's the best thing for her and us right now. It's not an easy thing to do, Nelson, but I've always been able to do it anyway. Always? Yes, I said, meeting his gaze. Are you sure you can take care of it for me? It might damage her more severely, Olivia. You mean more than she has been damaged, Nelson? I asked pointedly. He tried to hold my gaze and then lowered his eyes and nodded. All right, he said softly, I'll take care of it. It's better for everyone, even her, I said. You'll see. He stood and held a small smile on his lips and he gazed at me. Why are you smiling? I was just thinking. What was it they called you in school, Miss Cold? Yes, and Belinda was Miss Hot. Which one of us was better off, I challenged. That's something you'll have to answer for yourself, he said, and left to do what I wanted. Epilogue. Confused, I paused outside Belinda's bedroom door. She was laughing and talking with great animation, but I knew she had no visitor, and I also knew I had not had the phone reconnected. She laughed again. I opened the door slowly and gazed at her seated at her table. The phone receiver pinched between her shoulder and her head as she polished her fingernails. Belinda, I said, and she turned, swinging her eyes up at me. Oh, sorry, Arnold. My sister just walked in. I have to hang up. Call me tomorrow, she said. I'll be waiting. She sang and cradled the receiver. What are you doing? I asked, my heart pounding. Just talking to some friends, she said. I know. I spend too much time on the phone. Don't go running to Daddy, she said. Do you like this color, Olivia? She showed me her fingernails. Her right hand had dark red, her left hand had more of a pink. I'm going to do my toenails in it too. Quinn thinks it's hysterical. Why do girls do their toenails? He asked. Hardly anyone ever gets to see them, he says. But that's not true. Lots of times I walk barefoot, or I wore sandals. Oh dear, she suddenly said, I'm sorry. What? She picked up the phone again. Hello? I can't talk right now, Louise. Can you call me in the hour? Thanks, she hung up. So, she said, turning back to me, what's up? I hope you didn't forget that you're leaving today, Belinda. She blinked rapidly, then smiled. Oh no, I didn't forget. But I haven't had the chance to do much packing, Olivia. Don't start chastising me. It wasn't my fault. The phone hasn't stopped ringing since everyone heard I was going on holiday. They're actually all jealous. The car's here, Belinda. Don't worry about your things. I'll have them sent, I said. Oh, will you? Thank you. I really do appreciate how efficient and reliable you are, Olivia. Most people would kill for a sister like you looking after them all the time. Well, she said, looking around. She stood up. I guess I'll be better off when I put on my jacket then. I decided to wear the light blue coat. It's good for traveling, comfortable and easy to keep, she said, and went to her closet. I watched her put on the jacket, then looked at herself in the mirror to fluff her hair. I must have seen her do it 1,000 times, I thought. She smiled, content with her appearance. I guess we can't keep the driver waiting any longer. I'm ready, she said. I stepped out of the room and she followed. I didn't get to everyone, Olivia, so a lot of my friends will still be calling. I know it's a bore, but you'll tell them where I am, won't you? Yes, don't worry about it, I said. Good. She went down the stairs with a light bounce in her step and paused at the door to wait for me to catch up. You look so sad today, Olivia. You wish you were coming along, don't you? Why don't you? You can stop working for a while, she said. We could have fun together, be real sisters for a change, just doing silly things. I'll follow you later, Belinda, I said. Will you? Good, she replied and walked out. The nurse was waiting at the car. She opened the door and looked at me with anticipation. Everything's fine, I said. She nodded and turned to Belinda. Hello, Belinda, she said. My name's Clara. I love your hair. Is that your natural color? Belinda asked her. She smiled at me. Yes, it is. I've been thinking about changing my color. Belinda got into the rear of her limousine. Clara turned to me. Everything's all right, Mrs. Logan, she said. We'll be fine. Thank you. I'll come by tomorrow, I said, if there's any problems. There won't be, she assured me. She got in the limousine. Oh, Olivia. I lowered my head and looked in at Belinda. Yes? I almost forgot. There's a letter on my desk to be mailed out. I wrote to Adam Franklin, finally. He keeps writing and writing, sending me presents. Would you see that it's mailed? Yes, Belinda. Thanks. She looked at Clara. If you want something done, you ask Olivia, she said. I'll see you soon, Belinda. She smiled and I closed the door. The limousine started away. I stood there watching it disappear down the drive, and then I went into the house. Thelma was feeding Haley, and Chester was running through the house behind Jacob. They were pretending to be a railroad train. I'm the caboose, and Jacob's the engine, Mommy, Chester cried as they passed me. Be careful, Jacob. He gazed back at me with a serious face, his eyes telling me how unnecessary it is to give him admonition. They disappeared down the corridor. I went upstairs and looked in Belinda's room. There was no letter on the desk. She had written one, I was sure, but she had it written in 3 or 4 years ago. For a while I just stood there gazing at her things. I suddenly felt very tired. I was happy I decided to take the whole day off. The last few days had been trying, going up to the clinic, making the arrangements and doing what had to be done. I wouldn't make any changes in the room. I was sure Belinda would go in and out of the clinic for some time. I closed the door behind me and went downstairs, deciding to go back and sit for a while and do something I hadn't done for some time. Relax. It was crystal clear. Beautiful day with the air just crisp and cool enough and light sea breeze. Across the sky, the clouds looked stretched and wispy. A pair of herons circled above and dove beyond the hill. Just above the horizon, an oil tanker headed northeast off the left. I saw a yacht much like ours approaching the cape. The white caps glistened in the afternoon sunshine. The water was dark, silverly blue. I sat for some time just looking out at the sea. I didn't hear Samuel come home. Well, he asked, standing in the front of the gazebo. Well, what? How'd it go? It went well, I said, as I expected it would. Did you call to see how she's doing? No, not yet. They need time. They don't need us to annoy them. When do you intend on visiting? He asked. Samuel, she just left today. I think we need to give them time to work on her, don't you? It's just, I feel sorry for her, he said. You've got to get control of your emotions. If you want to do what's best for the people you love, I said. He looked at me with sudden interest. Funny, he said. I never think of you as loving Belinda. Of course I love her. She's my sister, isn't she? I said. He nodded and gazed at the sea too. Nelson called. He wanted to know how it was going. Generous of him, I said. He really is filled with remorse, Olivia. You're breaking my heart, I said, grimacing. Samuel laughed. Nelson calls you the Iron Lady of Cape now. I'm not interested in what he calls me, I said. Samuel smiled at me. I'm not. Okay, he said. I'm gonna go take a shower and get ready for dinner. It'll be soon, I said. That Haley, I swear, she's smiling already when she looks up at me. She's gonna be a charmer, he remarked. I have no doubt, I said. He went into the house, and the breeze became a little stronger. I thought I could hear the boys shouting and laughing. In the days and years to come, they would all be playing on this lawn, I thought, the three of them growing up as one family. I'm right, I know I'm right, I muttered to myself. I thought if Daddy was here, he would agree. Even Mother would agree, and she would want to talk about it. Someday I thought Nelson would realize all I had done for him, and he would be more grateful. He might even come to love me for who I was and not resent me. I felt confident of that. Why did I feel so sad, though? If I was right, why wasn't I feeling more satisfied? I was a very successful and powerful businesswoman. I had sons. I had Nelson's daughter. Wouldn't everything be just what I wanted it to be? If I could only see the future, just get one glimpse and be absolutely sure, wouldn't it be wonderful? However, that was impossible. That was like believing in magic, I thought. I remembered once when I was a little girl, I picked up a seashell and put it to my ear as Daddy instructed, and heard the roar of the ocean. How could the ocean be in a seashell, Daddy? I asked. It's not in there. The seashell is like ears that hold the ocean's roar, he told me. Then at night, the roar escapes and returns to the sea. I laughed. That's silly, Daddy. No, Olivia, it's true. The roar you hear is the roar that sounded 100 years ago. It's the ocean's voice captured. If you listen really hard, you might be able to hear the seagulls cry. Skeptical, I listened again, and I thought I had. My eyes widened with surprise. Believe in something magical, Olivia. We all need to believe in something magical, he advised. He took my hand and we continued down the beach. I held on to the seashell and then I dropped it in the darkness. All my life I thought I would be searching for it.